press conference of DJ Grossi, who's here this week, of course, for the NPT Review Conference, where he delivered an important statement on Monday, and he's now ready to take your questions.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon.
So, do we have any questions?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Thank you. Actually, I have just one question on...
Sorry, could you introduce yourself?
sorry, yeah, this is Namo Abdullah with Rudao Media Network. But I wonder if you can tell us which country in the Middle East poses the greatest impediment to realizing the dream of a nuclear weapons-free Middle East. Thank you.
Hello, thank you for the question. I think this is a collective responsibility. I think all of us, all the countries in the region, have been working in this area, as you know, for many decades, and aware of the... So it is to point like this country and say that this country A or country B is the most dangerous country in the world, I don't think it's appropriate. I think what is appropriate is to say that we all need to uphold the Non-Proliferation Treaty. We need to work for a world with less nuclear weapons. We need to uphold international law in every circumstance. All these are very important matters that are of course, absolutely indispensable for the next Secretary General to address.
Thank you. We have a question here. Sorry.
Not a question, a welcome.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you very much, Mr. Grossi, on behalf of the United Nations Correspondents Association for doing this briefing. We always like to see you here. Please come back often. As you know, my name is Edith Lederer from the Associated Press. I know that you have said that the majority of high enriched uranium is at Isfahan, and that the Isfahan site was hit intensely last June and less intensely in the recent airstrikes. Do you know if the fuel enrichment plant that the IAEA has never inspected, apparently, has been hit in those airstrikes?
Thank you, Edith, and let me first thank you in your capacity of head of the Correspondents Association for the warm welcome, and indeed, it is always my intention to talk to you. I think talking to the press directly is a responsibility of any high official, be it the Director General of the IAEA or the Secretary General, whomever else. So I'm very happy to talk to you every time. You referred to the situation of the nuclear program in Iran and the different facilities, Isfahan being one of those. It's a big compound that includes a number of different facilities related to the nuclear fuel cycle. Uranium processing, uranium conversion, and other important activities, which were subject to attacks during the 12-day war, as you yourself have mentioned. What I think you are referring to is an enrichment facility which Iran announced just a few days before the attacks. They indicated to us that they had a new facility to declare. We immediately requested access to it, which was granted, actually, and paradoxically, access was going to take place on June 13th, on the day the attacks commenced. So we were not in a position to visit this place. So we could not say at this point whether this place was simply an empty hall or a place where already cascades and centrifuges were being placed for operation. In any case, it wouldn't be the first. As you know, we have enrichment in Natanz, we have enrichment in Fordow. So this would have been yet another one. We were not able to visit it. I hope when the inspectors return, we can do the inspection work that is required. Thank you.
Do you know if it was hit actually in any of those airstrikes?
This one, apparently not.
We have a question over there.
Thank you. This is Mark Goldberg with Global Dispatches.
Hello.
Hi. In your view, how important is it that countries at this RevCon take steps towards prohibiting attacks on nuclear facilities? And is the inclusion of a prohibition on attacks on nuclear facilities something you would want to see included in a potential outcome document if one is adopted?
Well, in reality, there is a body of law already on that. There are the Geneva Protocols in the 1940s already prohibiting that. And there are several resolutions from the General Conference of the IAEA referring to this. Whether member states in this review conference are able to include some language on that or not, it is up to the logic of the conference. For me, and I have been saying this, I've said it here at the UN Security Council, I've said it in Vienna at the Board of Governors of the IAEA, nuclear facilities should never be attacked. So that is our official position.
Question here.
Thank you very much. Maybe my question is kind of in two parts. I mean,
Yes.
the NPT review is happening at a time where this war is happening. How is this complicating the process given this war? And you also said that the era of global consensus against Iran at the United Nations has come to an end. Can you elaborate a little bit more on this, and where do we go from here?
Well, I think the two things, thanks for the questions. In fact, they are connected. Obviously, a war, any war, but in particular a war that has been predicated on the possibility of one country developing nuclear weapons, and then the review conference of the NPT coming almost immediately or very close to that, constitutes a challenge because, of course, there are sides in a war, and people obviously do not see eye to eye on why it happened and whether there was any justification for that or not. So what has happened, and this is the sense of my comment on the second part of your question, is that in the past, and this is a factual observation, it's not more than that, in the past, we would have resolutions adopted without a vote at the United Nations Security Council on Iran, several. And then equally when the JCPOA was adopted. That common denominator among the membership, and in particular the 5 permanent members of the Security Council, is no longer there. It doesn't mean, and we should strive for that maybe, it doesn't mean that we cannot reconstruct some degree of consensus around what is happening there. But at the moment, unlike in the past, we don't have it. That does not mean we cannot act or we cannot work. And the IAEA is trying to always to find ways to transcend these differences, and in the case of the current negotiations, trying to provide the indispensable verification, inspection element that you will need, irrespective of what kind of shape and form the agreement has. When it comes to nuclear, you will have to be able to verify it.
Thank you. Question over there.
Me?
Yeah.
Thank you very much. My name is Vladimir Ichenko, National News Agency of Ukraine.
Yes.
Ukrinform. As far as I know, you've recently returned from Ukraine.
Yes.
So my question is in this context. What is, in your opinion, what needs to be done to deoccupy the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, which has been seized by Russian forces? What is the IAEA doing to help to achieve this?
Well, indeed, as in the case of Iran, there is a process which is activated, quite frequently between the United States and Russia and Ukraine. And in this process, as you know, one of the key issues is the issue of the nuclear power plant there. It is often listed, and I think rightly so, together with the territorial issues, as one of the most pressing matters and matters that are more difficult to resolve. So it's something I'm discussing all the time with them. Our main preoccupation is the safety of the facility and to avoid a nuclear accident there. I was discussing with President Zelensky on Sunday in Kyiv and later on that afternoon in Chernobyl and with other partners as well, as I always do also with Russia, because I think my role is to talk to both in order to avoid a nuclear accident. My impression is that the final picture will pretty much depend on these negotiations. As you know, the IAEA supports the negotiation, is not a party to the negotiation. The most important thing at the moment is to ensure that there is no accident. It's not an easy task, I can assure you. We are at the moment negotiating the 6th ceasefire. We were able to achieve 5 already, and the 6th is necessary now to conduct some indispensable repairs on the external power lines that feed the nuclear power plant there. So this is our main objective at the moment. Thank you.
Question there.
Hi.
Hello.
Kristen Salumi from Al Jazeera English. Thanks for the
Hello.
briefing.
Yeah.
So it was after the United States pulled out of the JCPOA that Iran began enriching uranium at higher levels, correct?
Higher than 3.67.
Presumably, according to the United States, that uranium is under the rubble still. It was buried in their attacks. Is that a concern still for the global community? Could that uranium be retrieved and repurposed, or are you confident that it is out of reach?
No. It should be addressed, this issue, in whichever state it is. It's a lot of highly enriched nuclear material at close to weapon grade, which we were inspecting up until June 2025. And there are specific procedures, you know, in the safeguards agreements that we have with Iran that allow countries in cases of, extraordinary circumstances, and there is a problem in having access to the material, to interact, to try to find ways so that we can check. Last time we were there, it was 440 something kilograms, 900 pounds more or less, that was sealed by the IAEA. So we need to check that that is the case. Obviously, one has to apply common sense to the whole situation. There is no peace. There is only a ceasefire, and there is probably this difficulty in accessing. Until my inspectors can go and verify that there is no access, we cannot confirm that this is the situation. We are being told that this is the case. So there are lots of things. We tried last year with the Cairo Agreement to pave the way for a return of the inspectors there. But of course, with the new war episode, this is still delayed.
And just to follow up, we know that President Trump opposed the JCPOA, but given that Iran has rejected the additional steps that the United States has requested from it, do you see the JCPOA as perhaps a starting point that could be used going forward with negotiations? And how would you approach that given the President of the United States' resistance to the JCPOA in the past?
No, I don't see that as a point of departure. I don't think anybody sees that as a point of departure. It had its logic 11 years ago. Now, of course, apart from the fact that the United States has rejected it, there are technical reasons for that. You know, that agreement was predicated on a much smaller nuclear program just one type of centrifuges and a much lower capacity. Now, Iran in the past few years has had an exponential progress in its program. It has last generation centrifuges. It has different compounds in Isfahan, and we were talking about just new facilities. So it's a completely different ball game, as one would say here in America. So JCPOA could not constitute a basis. We need to look into something different. And this is what has been discussed, what was being discussed in February, in the last round of negotiations I was part of, and now in Islamabad.
Yes, please.
Thank you. Amélie Bottelier from AFP News Agency. Two questions. On the NPT, considering the mistrust issues between nuclear powers and, among nuclear powers and between nuclear and non-nuclear states, how worried are you that in this context there might be a new proliferation not only within the nuclear states, but some countries looking into developing nuclear weapons because they are afraid not to be protected by others or to be able to answer any kind of threat?
Merci pour la question.
Sorry.
It is, yes.
A second question, if I may.
Yes.
As the race for Secretary General is well underway and your campaign as well, do you plan to step away from your job as Rebecca Greenspan did?
On the first thing, I think it's more an affirmation than a question, and I agree with it. I think there is a big concern that because of the growing tensions, because of the mistrust, because of the questions being put into the reliability of alliances and all of that, countries may find incentives to revisit their past abstention from going to nuclear weapons. And as we know, there are many countries that if they wanted, they would have the technology and the ability to go quite fast into nuclear weapons. And last Monday, at the opening of the NPT review conference, I was very clear in the sense that a world with more countries with nuclear weapons would not be a safer world. So we have to recommit to the norm of non-proliferation, absolutely. On the second question, I have been very clear from the very beginning, from the day I presented my candidacy, which was the 1st in November, that I considered the question, and perhaps given the issues I am doing, and I have been discussing with you, it would be even irresponsible of me to leave my job and concentrate on efforts on the campaign. I am very focused on the job I'm doing. I'm negotiating with Russia, with Ukraine. We are trying to avoid a nuclear accident. We are involved in the Iran negotiations. It will be really a dereliction of duty in my part. I don't criticize anybody. You know, people do what they do in terms of their mission and the job they have. Thank you.
Yes, in the back.
Thanks very much. My name is Dulcie Lineback from Pass Blue. Given that the review conference is heavily hinging on an outcome document, and there are many people experts who are saying that it won't happen. So what would the fallout be if the NPT grows even weaker? And what will you do in your role in IAEA to try to stop it from weakening? I have a second question, too, about your campaign. You have said that calls for women SG is a symbolic gesture. So what did you mean by that? Thanks.
Well, on the NPT question, I would say is very important to strengthen the norm. You know, these conferences traditionally have a certain logic by which a final document is sometimes a way to express the consensus of the delegates. But of course, given the fragmentations, the divisions, I mean, it's your bread and butter every day. That may be a challenge, and it has been the challenge for the last two review conferences, in spite of the efforts of very able chairpersons, presidents. So my impression is that the NPT in itself is a success story. So the fact that you might not have a final document, albeit important and relevant, is not a defining, I would say, criterion to determine whether the NPT is in good shape or not. I think it's a very important treaty, and as I said in the previous question, we have to make sure that countries continue to abide by it. On the second question, I think what's important is to have good candidates, men and women, and countries will decide who the best candidate is, a man or a woman. So the principle of absolute equality between men and women is assured and guaranteed once you have the possibility of having men and women. I don't think we have to elaborate much more on that. The process have started, and it will go on its own logic.
Thank you. We can take 2 more questions. Yes, in the back.
Thank you so much, sir. This is Alex with Russia's RIA Novosti News Agency. First of all, I have a quick follow-up on my colleague's question on Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. You've mentioned that you negotiated the 6th ceasefire. Could you please be a little bit more specific? When could it be reached, like days, month, weeks? And secondly, on the removal of highly enriched uranium from Iran, could you also be specific about the negotiations? Who are you talking to? And the status of the negotiations. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, on the ceasefire, I hope it's not going to be too long. We negotiated 5 already, so we have, I think, a reasonable channel of communications with the military commanders on both sides. And there is a common understanding, I believe, on the necessity to do these repairs. So there are sometimes, delays because the perimeter or the length of the line, which will be subject to the silence and truce, if you want, sometimes is a matter of discussions. But we are pretty confident that we are going to have a good outcome as in all the previous ones. On the second question, as you know, we are not yet part of this negotiation. I am in contact separately with Iran and with the United States, and we consult quite frequently. We know each other very, very well, so we consult occasionally on verification issues, on some technical matters. But in terms of the formal process, unlike the last time, for now, we haven't been invited to join. But in any case, as I was responding to the colleague here in the first row, the agreement will have to have a very robust inspection system. So I am sure that we will be involved at the right time.
So final question.
Can we ask from online?
Okay.
Can we ask?
Yes, go ahead, please.
Go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Grossi. This is Stefano Vaccara, Eton Press, in New York.
Yes.
I learned today, if I understood well, that basically the agreement that the Obama administration and the other country had done with Iran maybe was good 10 years ago, but now will not be anymore a starting point. At this point, I ask you a direct question. So is President Trump right when he said there was a bad deal? Means that, because today Iran, through that deal, will have been already, at least that's what he told us, with a nuclear weapon. And at this point, I want to ask you also this. Did you have any contact with the White House, not with the mission of the U.S. mission, but directly with the White House before the attack? I mean, before the war started, just a few days before, and now when they are in conversation to try to find the deal, are you consulted by the President Trump of the White House?
Thank you, Stefano. Many questions in your question. I would say we have been working a lot with the negotiators. In the case of Iran is the foreign minister, Dr. Abbas Araghchi. In the case of the United States is the special envoy, Ambassador Steve Witkoff and Dr. Kushner. And so these have been my interlocutors so far, and they continue to be interlocutors. But as I said just now, answering to another question, I am not a party, I'm not a part of the negotiation right now. We have conversations with both sides, so at some point there will be, I suppose, some involvement. It's up to the negotiators to decide, of course. As to the past is the past, you know. It's an opinion of the president. I wouldn't have a comment on his judgment about the JCPOA. His observations were public and very well known. I wouldn't have anything else to add to that, really.
Thank you very much. The DJ has to go to his next appointment, but thank you for coming.
Well, I thank you very much for the interest. I hope we can continue the dialogue on all these issues. I thank you for having come, and a good afternoon to all of you. Thank you. Thank you very much. See you soon. Bye-bye.